Some stories just stop you in your tracks. You catch a headline and suddenly the world narrows. All the usual noise fading away, replaced by this dark, painful thing that sits heavy in your chest. That's this story. And the truth is, every way you try to look at it, there's not a single part that doesn't hurt. So, Rob Reiner, you probably know the name, the guy behind some of the films that have shaped movie nights and lazy Sundays for the past few decades, When Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, The Princess Bride. Chances are, you've got memories from at least one of his movies. Or maybe you turned to them when you just needed to feel okay for a while. His wife Michele, she was a photographer and a philanthropist. By all accounts, both of them were generous and warm, the sort of people you'd feel lucky to call friends. A couple you point to and say, see, that's what it looks like when you get it right. But just before Christmas in 2025, everything changed. Both of them were found dead in their bedroom, multiple stab wounds. And the person arrested for their murder was their own son, Nick. I want to tell this story gently, not because I want to soften it or avoid the truth, but because reducing it to just a juicy headline feels wrong. This family deserves more than that. Nick Reiner is 32. He stood in court recently dressed in a jail shirt, barely making eye contact, turning to his lawyer for every answer. He pleaded not guilty. The autopsies are still in the pipeline, and police are still sorting through mountains of evidence, 2 terabytes, to be specific. The legal process grinds forward, slow as molasses, like these things always do. Meanwhile, outside that courtroom, Rob and Michelle's family are living in a nightmare that doesn't hit pause just because the system moves at its own pace. And to me, the legal process is only one part of it. The real story, the one with all its heartbreak and confusion, lives underneath, beating quietly. Nick's story is filled with struggle. He went to rehab for the first time at 15. He spent years fighting his addictions, checking in and out of more rehab programs than anyone should ever know. There were violent outbursts, damaged property, and terrifying moments. Smashing up his parents' guest house, suffering what he thought was a coke-induced heart attack. He said back then, nothing he did made sense. He called his actions illogical. Eventually, doctors diagnosed him with schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, which means he was dealing with not only the usual roller coaster of mood swings, but also symptoms like paranoia and hallucinations. A court placed him under a private conservatorship in 2020. His latest meds seemed to help, until he switched them about a month before everything went wrong. The side effects got too tough. 1 month. That gap will haunt anyone who hears about it. His parents knew every detail. They didn't look away. They tried everything. There's this 2015 interview where Rob Reiner admitted how desperate they were to help Nick. He talked about listening to them, experts, programs, all the official wisdom, when maybe he should have just listened harder to his own child. Any parent who's ever watched their kid suffer will hear that and know exactly what he means. That quiet regret, that what if. But still, Rob and Michele stayed close. They kept fighting for Nick. Rob even made a film in 2016, Being Charlie, working directly with his son on a script about addiction, turning all that pain into art, reaching across the darkness, however they could. Their last night was spent at a holiday party at Conan O'Brien's place. Just another evening, laughs and cocktails, everyone carrying their everyday worries and not knowing what's about to come. Conan remembered them afterward as lovely, generous people. The next morning, his friend was gone. The part that really gets me, the bit that lingers long after the news alerts stop, is what happens to the family left behind. Nick's older brother Jake and his sister Romy are still here. Jake wrote about all this on Substack, sharing as honestly as anyone can just how nightmarish the last stretch has been. He wrote about losing both parents in one terrible moment, and how nothing in the world prepares you for that kind of loss. And then there's this one line. Jake wrote that really, they lost more than half their family that night, not just their parents. Hearing that, you realize he counts Nick, too. Nick, who sits accused of the worst thing imaginable, is still his brother. Not a monster in a newspaper photo, but the same guy he grew up with. The grief is complicated and messy, like holding 2 impossible things at once: anger, heartbreak, and love, all tangled together. Jake's writing has a kind of quiet strength to it. He says that parts of what they're living through belong only to the family, and he's fighting to protect what little remains, to hold on to the tiny, precious things not already taken from them by violence, or courtrooms, or curious strangers. He's not showing off his grief for the world, he's trying to keep it safe. 3 kinds of pain, all at the same time: losing your parents, living through the horror of how it happened, and facing the brutal weight of loving someone who might be responsible. It's not a kind of pain most of us will ever completely understand, so there won't be any neat conclusion here. No final speech to make sense of it all. Maybe the court will find answers. Maybe it won't. But whatever justice means in stories like this, it doesn't look tidy. What's left is Jake and Romy getting up each day trying to live with everything that's gone and everything that remains. If hearing this made you reach out to someone you love, even for just a second, hang on to that. Because sometimes the only real thing you can do when the world feels unbearable is remember that every headline comes with people. Real, hurting, stubborn, loving people, trying to get through the next day. Drop your thoughts if you want to share. And hey, if you stuck with me through this, I appreciate it more than you know. See you next time.